It was a crisp morning at the Coronado Naval Base in California, home of the U.S. Navy SEALs. The sun glinted off rows of Humvees, and the air carried the faint metallic echo of distant gunfire from the training range. Today was no ordinary day. The SEALs were hosting a special demonstration, and among the invited guests was a man whose reputation preceded him, Steven Seagal. The legendary martial artist and actor arrived without fanfare, black tactical jacket, dark sunglasses calm as still water. Most of the younger SEALs had grown up watching his movies, but seeing him in person sparked mixed reactions. Some admired him, others smirked. Movie stars on a SEAL base, one of them whispered. "What's next? Red carpets on the obstacle course." The group chuckled quietly until a booming voice silenced them. Admiral Thomas Hayes, a decorated Navy SEAL commander with a face carved by years of battle, was walking toward Seagal. Hayes had served on more covert operations than anyone on the base. He was known for his discipline and his dry humor. Extending a firm handshake, the Admiral said, "Welcome to Coronado, Mr. Seagal. I've seen a few of your flicks. You hit hard for Hollywood." Seagal smiled faintly. "I do my best, Admiral." The Admiral grinned, then threw out a teasing question that made everyone laugh. "So tell me, Mr. Action Hero, what's your call sign? Every man here's got one. You can't join us without it." The crowd erupted in laughter. Even the officers nearby cracked smiles. It was a harmless joke, or so they thought, but Seagal didn't laugh. He simply looked at the Admiral for a long, silent moment. Then, with a calmness that cut through the noise, he said, "Call me Iron Widow." The laughter died instantly. The Admiral's smirk faded, his eyes narrowing. The name sent a strange chill down his spine. Iron Widow. He hadn't heard that name in years, and certainly not from anyone outside top-level clearance. The moment Steven Seagal said those two words, every SEAL in the room felt it. Something wasn't right. And within minutes, that joke would turn deadly serious. The air went still. The laughter that had filled the courtyard moments earlier vanished like smoke in the wind. Every man in uniform exchanged uncertain glances. The Admiral, usually unshakable, stood frozen for a beat, his grin fading into something that looked dangerously close to shock. "Iron Widow?" he repeated quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's an interesting name." Seagal gave a small nod. "You asked for a call sign, Admiral." "That's the one I go by." Hayes tilted his head, studying Seagal closely. The actor's posture was perfectly still, calm, confident, but with an undercurrent of something powerful, something dangerous. Hayes had seen that kind of stillness before, in men who had survived firefights and carried ghosts behind their eyes. He forced a chuckle. "You're telling me you had a call sign? In Hollywood?" The men around them laughed nervously, eager to restore the light mood. But Seagal didn't play along. Instead, he took a slow step forward and said, "Not in Hollywood, Admiral. In Myanmar." The chuckle stopped again. Hayes' eyes flickered, a muscle in his jaw twitched. For the first time that day, his command presence faltered. "Careful what you're implying, son," Hayes said, his voice sharpening. "That's classified territory you're touching." Seagal didn't back down. His tone stayed level, almost too calm. "I'm not implying anything, Admiral. I was there. You could have heard a pin drop. Even the sound of the sea breeze against the flags seemed to pause." The young SEALs standing nearby glanced at each other, confused. Myanmar, Operation Iron Widow. None of that was public knowledge. The Admiral's mind raced. The mission Seagal had mentioned was buried deep in sealed military archives, a covert rescue operation that went catastrophically wrong. Out of 9 SEALs, only 3 made it back alive. The one who saved them? No one knew his name. He was just known by one phrase whispered in the debrief reports, Iron Widow, and now this Hollywood star was saying it like it was his own. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "You're walking a thin line, Mr. Seagal. You don't know what you're talking about." Seagal's lips twitched into the faintest smile. "Maybe you're right. Or maybe I just know what really happened in those mountains." A ripple of murmurs moved through the assembled SEALs. The tension was suffocating. One officer whispered, "Sir, should I?" But the Admiral raised a hand to silence him. Then Hayes took a slow step forward until he was face to face with Seagal. "You're making some heavy claims here," he said quietly. "You got proof of any of this?" Seagal leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only the Admiral could hear. "You remember the extraction point near the river? The man covering your 6 wasn't one of your own. The Admiral's eyes widened slightly, his breath catching. For a split second, the Admiral's composure cracked. A flicker of recognition, maybe even fear, flashed across his face. Then he stepped back quickly, trying to hide it from the men. "Enough of this nonsense," he barked. "Let's move to the training demonstration. We've wasted enough time." But everyone could see it. Something about that exchange had shaken the Admiral deeply. Seagal said nothing, only followed the group as they moved toward the open combat area. His expression was unreadable, like a man watching a storm he already knew was coming. The young SEALs couldn't stop whispering. What was that about? Did he really say Myanmar? Who's Iron Widow? One trainee muttered, "Maybe it's just part of the show, like a publicity stunt." Another replied, "Then why does the Admiral look like he's seen a ghost?" As the group gathered near the training mats, the Admiral called out orders sharply, trying to reassert authority. "All right, men. Let's show our guest how real operators train." But Seagal wasn't intimidated. He adjusted his cuffs calmly and asked, "Do you still want to know where I got that call sign, Admiral?" Hayes froze again, then forced a smirk. "You tell me, Seagal. I'm dying to hear your story." Seagal's voice was calm, but his words cut like a blade. "You already did." A hush fell over the entire field. Every soldier stared, caught between disbelief and curiosity. The Admiral's hands clenched at his sides. No one laughed this time. The Admiral had no idea that by mocking Steven Seagal, he had just opened a classified chapter of his own past, one that was never meant to see the light of day. Do you think Seagal was bluffing, or did he really know something the Admiral wanted buried? Comment your guess below, and tell us which country and city you're watching this story from. The crowd of SEALs had gone silent. The name Iron Widow hung in the air like a ghost refusing to fade. Even the Admiral, stoic, battle-hardened, impossible to rattle, looked unsettled. As the men formed a half-circle for the demonstration, Admiral Hayes barked new orders just to mask his nerves. "All right, people, eyes up. This is still a military base, not a movie set." But deep inside, his mind wasn't on the training ground anymore. It was trapped years back, in the humid jungles of Myanmar, 2003. Rain poured like bullets, hammering against the helicopter's metal shell. The jungle canopy below looked endless, dark, suffocating, crawling with enemy patrols. Hayes was leading SEAL Team 9, on a mission to extract a captured intelligence officer from a hostile insurgent camp. Things went bad fast. Communications jammed. Extraction coordinates compromised. Their evac chopper was shot down 5 clicks from the rendezvous. The team was stranded, wounded, and surrounded. That's when they first heard the voice on the radio. Distorted, low, calm. "Stay low. Move to grid 7-9. I'll cover your 6. No one knew who it was. Command hadn't assigned backup. But that voice gave precise directions, every time saving them from an ambush seconds before it happened. At first, Hayes thought it was a trick. Then came the moment that burned itself into his memory forever. His men were pinned behind a ridge, enemy snipers closing in. One wrong move and they'd be wiped out. Suddenly a figure emerged from the tree line, alone, moving like smoke through the rain. Black fatigues, no insignia. The man struck fast, silent, lethal. Every enemy went down before a sound escaped their lips, and then, just as quickly as he came, he vanished. When the team finally reached the border at dawn, half dead and out of ammo, they found a message carved into a supply crate left behind. Iron Widow. Hayes never knew who that man was. Command told him to drop it. The op was classified, sealed, and buried. Standing now in the Coronado training field, Admiral Hayes felt a chill crawl down his spine. Seagal stood a few yards away, calm as a monk, watching him. Hayes tried to shake it off. "Let's begin," he ordered sharply, pretending nothing was wrong. The trainees obeyed, pairing off for hand-to-hand drills. But the Admiral's focus kept drifting to Seagal. The man's movements, his posture, his precision felt eerily familiar. He'd seen those same controlled motions once before. In Myanmar, Hayes clenched his jaw. It can't be. That was 20 years ago. Still, curiosity got the better of him. As Seagal effortlessly demonstrated a disarm technique on one of the trainees, Hayes called out, "That's Aikido, right? Learned that for your movies?" Seagal looked up, his tone soft but cutting. "Not for the movies, Admiral. For survival." A ripple of whispers ran through the group. The Admiral forced a smirk. "You really expect us to believe you were in the jungle with special forces?" Seagal didn't flinch. "I don't expect belief," he said. "I expect memory." That line hit Hayes like a punch to the chest. Memory. The word echoed like a ghost from his past. The younger SEALs exchanged uneasy looks. "Sir, what's going on?" one of them asked. Hayes didn't answer. He couldn't. The face in front of him, older now, broader, calmer, was becoming harder and harder to deny. He suddenly remembered the last words the mysterious operative spoke on the radio before disappearing. Mission complete. The Iron Widow rests. And now, 2 decades later, the same man stood before him, alive, quiet, and unshaken. Hayes's hands trembled slightly. "Who are you really, Seagal?" he asked. Seagal took off his sunglasses slowly, his piercing eyes locking on the Admiral. "You already know, Admiral. You just don't want to admit it." A heavy silence fell again. Every SEAL on the field could feel it. Something was happening here that went far beyond a friendly demonstration. One of the officers whispered, "Sir, should we call this off?" But before the Admiral could respond, Seagal took a slow step forward. "You don't need to be afraid of the truth," he said calmly. "You just need to remember who pulled you out of that fire." The Admiral's throat went dry. Could it be him? For years, Hayes had nightmares about that night. The voice, the ghost in the jungle, the man who saved them. And now, that same voice stood here in broad daylight. The base had no idea they were watching history unfold. Steven Seagal wasn't there to impress anyone. He was there to remind one man that legends never die. They just stay silent until it's time to speak. If you were in the Admiral's place, hearing a ghost from your past speak your secret call sign, would you confront him or stay silent? Comment your answer below and tell us which city and country you're watching from. The sound of boots scraping against concrete echoed across the Coronado training yard. The SEAL trainees had circled up again, expecting a light-hearted exhibition of self-defense moves for the cameras. But no one was laughing now. Admiral Hayes stood stiff, jaw clenched, eyes locked on Seagal. That name, Iron Widow, was still echoing in his head like a ghost refusing to fade. He had spent 2 decades convincing himself it was just a code name, a rumor, a classified phantom buried in a forgotten file. And yet here stood Steven Seagal, moving with the calm assurance of a man who had seen too much war to ever flinch again. "All right, Mr. Seagal," Hayes said, his tone tight. "Let's see what you've got. Demonstrate your techniques." Seagal gave a small nod. "As you wish, Admiral." He removed his jacket slowly, folding it neatly over a bench. The base wind tugged at his black shirt, and the faint outline of old scars caught the sunlight. Scars no movie stuntman could ever fake. Hayes gestured to one of his top trainees, a massive SEAL nicknamed Titan, to step forward. "Show Mr. Seagal how we handle close combat," he ordered, his voice carrying that faint edge of provocation. Titan grinned confidently. "Yes, sir." He squared up, towering over Seagal. The rest of the team smirked. This was going to be quick, or so they thought. Seagal didn't take a stance. He simply stood still, his eyes half closed, hands relaxed at his sides. Titan lunged forward, lightning fast, but before anyone could blink, Seagal shifted, his hand snapping up like a whip. Crack! Titan hit the ground, hard, his arm twisted, his face inches from the dirt. The impact was so fluid, so effortless that the crowd fell silent. Seagal hadn't even broken a sweat. Titan groaned, struggling to rise. Seagal helped him up with surprising gentleness. "Don't resist force with force," he said calmly. "Redirect it. Control the flow." The trainees exchanged looks. That wasn't a movie stunt. That was mastery. Admiral Hayes forced a grin, hiding his unease. Impressive. But maybe try someone more experienced. He stepped forward himself. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. No one challenged the Admiral on not in combat, not ever. But today, something deeper was driving him. He had to know the truth. "Mr. Seagal," Hayes said, his tone hard as steel. "How about you show me how Iron Widow fights?" A few gasps rippled through the crowd. Seagal didn't move for several seconds. Then he slowly raised his eyes. "Are you sure you want to do that, Admiral?" Hayes smirked, though his heart pounded in his chest. "I don't back down from ghosts," Seagal sighed. "Very well." They faced each other in the center of the training field. No cameras, no announcers, just raw tension. The SEALs watched, their breaths held. Hayes moved first, launching a rapid tactical strike, fast, efficient textbook Navy combat. But Seagal didn't block or dodge. He moved through the attack. catching the Admiral's arm, redirecting the motion, and in a blink, Hayes was on the ground, disarmed. His wrist pinned effortlessly. The silence was deafening. Seagal leaned in slightly and whispered something only Hayes could hear. "You used that same move behind the ridge in Myanmar. You almost got your team killed." The Admiral froze. The exact same ridge, the same night, the same ghost. Seagal released him gently and stood up, his expression unreadable. "No shame in losing, Admiral," he said softly. "You only lose when you forget who taught you to fight." Hayes stood slowly, breathing hard. His pride burned, but deeper than that burned recognition. He stared at Seagal, this calm, unflinching man, and in that instant he knew. He was the one. The same shadow who saved SEAL Team 9 2 decades ago. The same Iron Widow whose existence the Pentagon swore was fiction. The Admiral swallowed hard, his voice barely steady. Why now? Why reveal yourself after all these years?" Seagal's eyes softened. "Because truth has a time, and sometimes even legends need to remind the living what real warriors look like." A hushed silence fell again. The trainees, who moments ago saw a movie star, were now staring at something else entirely. A soldier, a ghost, a man who carried the silence of the battlefield in his bones. The Admiral straightened, saluted sharply. Seagal returned it. It was the first salute Hayes had given out of respect, not rank. The base had come expecting a show. What they got instead was a lesson, one that would echo across every SEAL unit in the world. The man they mocked wasn't just a Hollywood name. He was the warrior their legends were built on. If you were in that training yard watching the Admiral challenge Steven Seagal, would you step in or stay silent and watch? Comment your answer below and tell us which country you're watching from. The training field was silent. Even the ocean breeze seemed to still, as if the entire base was waiting for Steven Seagal to speak. The Admiral's salute still hung in the air, a gesture that had changed the entire tone of the day. The SEAL trainees, men who feared nothing, stood frozen, wide-eyed. Just minutes ago, they were joking about the Hollywood star in their midst. Now they were staring at someone who had just dismantled their commanding officer, with the calm precision of a man who'd seen real war. Admiral Hayes cleared his throat. "Mr. Seagal, or should I say, Iron Widow," he began carefully, his voice low but firm. "The operation in Myanmar, and it was classified level 9. No one outside of top command was ever supposed to know. How could you possibly have been there?" Seagal didn't speak immediately. He looked out over the horizon for a long moment, as if weighing the cost of his words. Then in that calm, steady tone he said, "Because, Admiral, I wasn't supposed to be there either." Murmurs rippled through the ranks. Seagal continued, "Back then I was working with an international task unit. Not officially American, not officially anyone. We were ghosts, sent to clean up the mistakes governments couldn't admit existed. Your team wasn't supposed to survive that mission. But someone decided otherwise." Hayes stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "You're telling me that the entire op was manipulated?" Seagal nodded. "Not manipulated, protected. There were civilians in that village you were ordered to level. The coordinates you received were false. You were walking into a trap, not just by insurgents but by politics." A stunned silence fell over the field. The younger SEALs looked between their commander and Seagal, unsure what to believe. Seagal's eyes grew harder. "When I intercepted your comms, I saw what was about to happen. You were going to be sacrificed, written off as lost in combat to cover up a failed deal. That's why I went in, alone." The Admiral's lips parted, but no words came out. He remembered the strange orders, the confusion, the sudden blackout of communication before the ambush. For years he'd buried those questions, convinced it was just bad luck. Seagal's voice softened. "I wasn't there as a hero, Admiral. I was there to stop a mistake from becoming a massacre." He paused, scanning the faces of the soldiers before him. The name Iron Widow wasn't a code name. It was a warning. "A warning?" one of the younger SEALs asked. Seagal nodded slowly. "It meant those who destroy truth will become widows of their own lies." The words hit like a gut punch. Admiral Hayes swallowed hard. "Why did you never come forward? You could have cleared your name, proven who you were." Seagal's expression turned solemn. "Because, Admiral, legends serve better when they're silent. The world doesn't need another hero. It needs reminders. People forget too easily. They forget the cost of silence, the price of blind orders, the danger of pride. He took a deep breath. That's why I disappeared. That's why Iron Widow had to die. The trainees stood speechless. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was a truth buried under classified files and forgotten loyalties. The Admiral stepped closer. You saved my men. You saved me. I owe you my life, Seagal. But tell me honestly, why come here today? Why now? Seagal's gaze softened. Because, Admiral, the new generation needs to see what respect, restraint, and responsibility look like. Power isn't about who can hit the hardest. It's about who can stand calm when everyone else loses control. He turned toward the trainees, his voice carrying like thunder in the silence. Each of you wears the uniform of warriors. But don't forget, the greatest battle you'll ever fight is not out there. He pointed toward the horizon. It's in here. He tapped his chest. Your ego, your anger, your arrogance. Those are the enemies that destroy more soldiers than bullets ever could. Every man in that yard stood a little taller, a little quieter. Even Admiral Hayes bowed his head slightly. Seagal's final words hit like the closing note of a sermon. Iron Widow wasn't about war. It was about peace earned through discipline. And peace, he said, only belongs to those who know when not to fight. And just like that, the myth became a message. The SEALs came to see a movie star. But they left having met a warrior who had carried the burden of silence for 2 decades. In that moment, Steven Seagal didn't just remind them who he was. He reminded them what it means to be human. Do you think Seagal did the right thing by staying silent all those years? Or should he have revealed the truth sooner? Comment your thoughts below and tell us which country you're watching from. The air around the Coronado base felt heavier now, charged with the kind of silence that only comes after the truth has shaken the ground beneath everyone's feet. The trainees, the officers, the staff, they all stood still watching Steven Seagal with a mix of disbelief and awe. Admiral Hayes hadn't said a word since Seagal's last sentence. His eyes stayed locked on the man in front of him, the one who had once been a ghost, a savior, and a myth all at once. Finally, Hayes exhaled. You carried that secret for 20 years, he said quietly. And you came back here just to teach us humility. Seagal gave a faint nod. Not to teach, Admiral. To remind. Before Hayes could reply, a sudden burst of noise broke the tension. Several SEALs' phones began buzzing simultaneously. Notifications, social media alerts. Someone had recorded the entire encounter. The fight, the salute, and Seagal's confession. The clip was already spreading like wildfire. Within minutes, the world outside the base was watching. On social media, the video was everywhere. Steven Seagal humbles Navy SEAL Admiral. Turns out he's the secret hero of a classified mission. Iron Widow, the ghost soldier who saved SEAL Team 9. Millions of views poured in within hours. News outlets scrambled for confirmation. Ex-SEALs weighed in, and old veterans began sharing memories of rumors they'd heard decades ago, whispers about a silent operative who moved like a shadow and saved an entire squad from annihilation. But the most powerful reactions weren't from the media. They were from ordinary people. Comments flooded in from around the world. Respect. True warriors don't brag. He didn't need fame, he already had honor. Legends walk among us and we're too blind to see them. Back at the base, the atmosphere shifted completely. The same men who had chuckled when Seagal arrived now approached him quietly, their expressions filled with newfound respect. Sir, one trainee said, voice trembling slightly, it's an honor to meet you. Seagal gave a calm nod, resting a hand on the young man's shoulder. The honor's in your heart, son. Keep it there. Don't let the world take it. Later that evening, the sun began to set over the base, painting the sky gold and crimson. Admiral Hayes found Seagal sitting alone near the pier, gazing at the horizon. The Admiral walked over slowly, carrying a small, weathered box. Seagal didn't turn to look. Still can't believe it? He asked softly. Hayes chuckled. Believe it? I still can't process it. All these years. I thought you were a story told around campfires. Some myth to make rookies feel safe. Seagal smiled faintly. Sometimes myths are just truths with better patience. The Admiral opened the box carefully. Inside was a medal, a silver star, tarnished from age but still gleaming in the fading light. This was supposed to be yours, Hayes said. We never knew who to give it to. We only had a code name. Now we do. Seagal looked at it, then gently closed the box. I appreciate the gesture, Admiral. But I didn't do it for medals. Hayes shook his head. You didn't do it for glory either. That's why you deserve it. After a moment's silence, Seagal finally accepted the box, not with pride, but with quiet humility. Then, to everyone's surprise, Hayes turned toward the pier, where dozens of SEALs had gathered. He raised his voice firm and clear. Men! This is Steven Seagal, call sign Iron Widow. He saved my team and he saved this country from a truth we weren't ready to face. You will address him with the respect due to a brother in arms. A unified salute swept through the crowd. The sound of boots striking the ground echoed like thunder. Seagal stood still, hands clasped behind his back, and returned the salute. Reporters and officials began to arrive, but Seagal kept his composure. When asked for comment, he simply said, "The world doesn't need to know what I did. It needs to remember what men like Admiral Hayes still stand for: loyalty, courage, and honor without noise." He paused, glancing toward the rows of young SEALs watching him. Strength isn't about domination. It's about control. It's not about breaking others. It's about mastering yourself. The reporters went quiet. It wasn't a quote. It was a code of life. As the cameras rolled and the sun dipped below the horizon, the name Iron Widow stopped being a mystery. It became a symbol, a reminder that true warriors don't crave recognition. They serve, they protect, and when the mission ends, they walk away in silence. The SEAL Admiral started the day mocking a man he thought was just an actor. By sunset, he saluted a ghost who had saved his life. The world saw a viral clip, but those who understood saw history repeating itself: respect, humility, and the rare kind of strength that never needs to shout. If you were in the Admiral's place, discovering that the man you joked about was the hero who once saved your life, what would you say to him? Comment your thoughts below and tell us which city and country you're watching from. Night had fallen over Coronado Base. The waves crashed softly against the shore, and the wind carried the faint echo of boots retreating back to the barracks. The training field, once filled with laughter, then silence, now stood under the silver glow of the moon. Steven Seagal, Iron Widow, stood alone at the edge of the pier, watching the lights shimmer across the ocean. His jacket was back on, his face calm, unreadable. The medal Admiral Hayes had given him sat on the bench beside him, untouched. Behind him, Hayes approached quietly. "You're leaving, aren't you?" Seagal turned slightly, offering a faint smile. "You already know the answer, Admiral." Hayes sighed, crossing his arms. "After everything that happened today, after what you revealed, the world's going to want answers. The Pentagon's already calling." Seagal chuckled softly. "They always do when they're late to the truth." The Admiral looked at him for a long moment. "You could stay. Train the new recruits. You've earned that right." Seagal shook his head. "I didn't come here to stay. I came to remind. My time's past, Admiral. Now it's theirs." He nodded toward the training grounds where young SEALs still moved in disciplined rhythm under the floodlights. They'll be the ones carrying the code forward, if they remember what it means to fight without hate. Hayes' voice softened. "You could have been one of us officially, you know. You would have worn the trident with honor." Seagal looked out at the horizon again. "I never needed a badge to know who I was. Some warriors serve under flags, others serve in silence." For a few seconds, neither man spoke. The night breeze carried only the sounds of the ocean and the distant hum of the base generators. Finally, Hayes stepped forward, extending his hand. "Then thank you, Iron Widow, for saving us, and back then and now." Seagal clasped his hand firmly. "You saved yourselves, Admiral. I just gave you a chance to remember who you were." He turned, picking up the metal box. Then, to Hayes' surprise, he set it gently on the railing and let it slide into the dark water below. Hayes blinked. That was a silver star. Seagal's eyes didn't leave the horizon. "A medal's just metal, Admiral. Respect, and that's earned here." He tapped his chest. "And once you've earned it, you don't need anyone to hang it for you." The Admiral's expression softened into a smile of genuine admiration. "The world's changed, Seagal. People don't live by codes anymore." Seagal finally looked at him. "Then maybe it's time they learned again." With that, he started walking down the pier. The faint rhythm of his boots echoed against the wood. Steady, unhurried, final. Hayes watched until Seagal's silhouette vanished into the darkness, swallowed by the shadows like he was never there at all. the base woke to find a small wooden box left on the Admiral's desk. No signature. Just one item inside, a folded strip of black cloth embroidered with 2 words in faded silver thread, Iron Widow. Below it, written in Seagel's handwriting, were 6 words. Truth doesn't retire. Neither should honor. The Admiral stood there for a long time, holding the cloth, his throat tight. Outside, the sound of recruits training filled the air again. Shouts, strikes, focus. But something about the energy had changed. The jokes were gone. The arrogance was gone. What remained was respect. The legend of Iron Widow had done what no speech, no order, and no medal ever could. It had restored meaning. He came in silence and left the same way. A shadow among soldiers. A reminder that strength isn't about fame or power, but discipline and heart. The Admiral would tell the story only once, years later, to a new generation of SEALs. And when he did, they didn't just listen, they stood. If you believe true strength is about character, not titles, type respect in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories of courage, humility, and honor, just like this one.